Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You're watching The Whole Living Show on Trajectory TV.
Hello, everyone. I'm always jamming to that music back there. I have to thank the Brandy Johnson for that amazing intro because I absolutely love it. The music just keeps me moving. But we have a special show as always tonight, so we are glad that you are here joining the Whole Living Show. And as always, I like to start out with a bit of information. I'm going to show a video tonight. And it shouldn't shock you because there have been so many accounts of so many different food items that are on the market or fast food items where people are showing, how very toxic they are. So this is no exception. So I'm going to share my screen. Now, this is not to knock any products, right? But I want you to be aware of what's out there and what you're consuming, what you are actually putting in your body. As always, as I always like to say, and I always like to preface these videos with, go out there and do your own research. Make sure that you are paying attention to the ingredients in the products that you are consuming, that you are looking up those ingredients, that you understand what those ingredients can do to your body. So I just want to share this with you to make you aware. Now you have to make decisions on your own, right, about what you want to do, but it wouldn't be like me not to share it. So I am going to share my screen because I want to show you this video. And it really brings things home when you think about it, because it just shows us what actually is in these different products. So if you can see my screen here, I'm going to share this video right now. Here we go. Oh, no sound.
They're so filled with toxins that they will not burn when you hit them with a blowtorch. Okay, so here's our first Oreo, and we're just going to do a quick 1/2 second blast, and nothing really happens there. So here's our second Oreo. We're going to do about 1 to 2 seconds, and again, still nothing happens. Okay, I'm going to increase the video speed for you guys so you're not just waiting around. So that was a 5-second blast right there, and still nothing. This is kind of interesting. All right, we're going to kick it up to about a 10 to 12-second blast here on this next one, and still nothing. Okay, notice the wood is burning, but the Oreo is really not. Okay, we're going to do a full 30-second blast on this last one here. And oh my God, I just can't believe this. This is crazy. The wood is on fire. The Oreo is barely destroyed. This is the solid cookie right there. That was 30 whole seconds. Look at this. It didn't even really burn. In fact, you could still see Oreo. Look at this. This stuff on the inside is barely melted. The wood is trash, but the cookie stays strong. Wow. This is...
So I wanted to share that with you, just because I want you to really understand what you're actually putting in your body. And think about things like this. When you see these type of experiments, if it's not breaking down when they're putting fire to this particular product, if it's not breaking down, the Oreo is not breaking down, what do you think is happening inside your body? And how do you think your body will be able to break something like that down if something like fire can't even break it down? So I want you all to really recognize the things that you are consuming and what they're actually made of and how harmful it is. Now that video goes on to talk about some of the things that it does to the body, and it gives you some kind of natural things that you can do. We're going to start sharing some natural products on this show as well. So my first one for tonight is coconut oil. And I implore you to use coconut oil, one, because coconut oil is antimicrobial. So what does that mean? It means that it's antifungal, it's antibacterial, and it's antiviral. But you can cook with it, you can eat it. If you are suffering with fungus in your gut, you can actually just take a teaspoon of it every day and eat it. You can put it in your tea, but it's great for all of those things, right? It's a great cooking oil as well, because you can cook it at high temperatures, which, you know, if you've heard before, you cannot do that with olive oil, even though olive oil is really good for you as well. But it's a great cooking oil as well. So coconut oil is our first product for the night, something to incorporate in your daily life that you can use, that's going to help you to clean up your gut, as well as allow you to cook with a healthy oil. All right. So tonight, and my guest actually tonight, we're going to get her thoughts on that, because she's a scientist, right? So she's going to know a lot more about this than I am. So we're going to bring her in. We're going to get her commentary on this. But let me introduce to you, back with us this evening is Carli Abrams, scientist turned marketer with a track record of driving innovation, brand growth, and strategic impact for iconic brands such as Scott, Viva, Serenity, Tenya, Torque, Food Saver, and her very own Polynation Apothecary. So let's bring her in. You've seen her here before, and I hope that she continues to come back because she's just so knowledgeable. Hello, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, and welcome back. We thank you for coming back again. So I want to get your take on this video, because you know, you've done research around a lot of different items, right? That's how you derived your own products. But I think it's important to say that you're a scientist. You're going to understand this a lot more than most people. Talk to us about like items like the Oreo, right? Because there's so many products out there. So we're not trying to single out an Oreo. I just saw that video come across my feed, but there are so many products out there like that you cannot break down with fire or water, right? Or crush them or leave them out and they don't disintegrate, right? We've seen these videos. Tell us the importance of like really understanding the ingredients and what we're consuming.
Yes. You know, listen, I often talk about pollinators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those who are loyal to Pollination Apothecary and love it, use it. We are weedologists, okay? And so we just got to get used to turning over and reading that back label and referencing different sites that help you to understand what those different compounds and different ingredients are. Okay. So that's a must. I was surprised when I saw that video. I had never seen the Oreo being torched before.
Yes.
And it reminds me of the videos and things about like Twinkies.
Yeah.
And so, you know, automatically, if something's not breaking down under that type of fire, you already know that your gut is going to struggle.
And then you're going to have a problem digesting. So, maybe
have other side effects if that's one of your favorite snacks.
Exactly.
over time.
Yeah, exactly. And as we talked about last time, right, it affects your digestion and your digestive system, right? But we talked about also how it starts to show up, like, you know, in your skin, right? How you start to see problems even potentially with like your kidneys, your liver, your thyroid, right? Like everything starts to become out of balance when you start to put all these chemicals in your body, and it has these long lasting effects that I don't think people really realize, because we get to the point
where we taught that. We haven't been exactly. We've just been taught run to the doctor, but it depends on what doctor you go to if you really get to the root cause of it. But yes, it's exactly what you're saying. It's like once one system gets out of balance, you're more susceptible of other systems getting out of balance.
Absolutely.
So you want to bring that back into balance as quick and soon as possible, right? Because we're human, so our systems are always going to be, you know, some type of inundation, right? You know, it could be low, it could be medium, it can be high, and extreme at times. And so we just got to get more used to being in tune with our bodies. So we know when something is out of balance and then working to get back into balance, alignment as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. And I know that that is a big part of your wheelhouse. But what we are here to talk about tonight, and I can't wait to get into this conversation. We are talking about keeping your femininity. So tell us why you wanted to explore this topic and why you've been, you know, kind of researching this and taking a look at what's been happening in the world today around femininity.
Oh, that's a good one. In relation to what's happening right now.
Exactly.
You know, so healing the femininity or keeping the femininity, right? They go hand in hand, right? And so on my own journey, I had to heal my femininity in order to even get to where I'm at today. Okay. So on my journey, at some point, you know, my skin became like, you know, 7 shades darker. I was feeling like I was burning from the inside out. I was burning on the outside. I had blisters, boils, lesions, nodules, everything. I went through so many different cycles. It wasn't linear. And there was many different aspects going on that I had to figure out, because when I tried to lean into Western medicine at the beginning, no idea. It was no help, no clue, no help. And so I said, if I don't take the lead on this, then I may not be here. And no, so let me lean into my background in chemical engineering. Let me lean into my herbalist background. And and that's what I did. And so part of that journey brought me to understanding I needed to heal my femininity. A lot of prayer, meditation, and then just being honest with yourself, right? So, you know, it became easier as I healed certain aspects than to then realize that, oh, now I needed to heal the femininity.
And I can so identify with you on that journey, right? Because going through breast cancer and having surgery, you know, I made decisions about, you know, how I needed to handle the breast cancer based on what I knew at the time, right? So I had surgery. I had a mastectomy on one side, and I struggled in the beginning with my femininity around that, because the breast is identified so much around your femininity and your womanhood. And so it became a struggle for me initially. Will I still be sexy? Will I be, looked at as still as a woman, right? And from going through what you just said, right? When things start to show up on externally, right? Then you're tested. You're tested around your femininity and your womanhood.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Part of what I say, Tracy, I say, listen, from 2019 until like maybe about a year ago, I say I went through my ugly phase, right? My monster phase, you call it whatever you want. And I say that with love, right? Because I didn't look like myself. Obviously, I didn't feel like myself. And it was so glaring and so obvious. And so sometimes I believe, and that sometimes we go through what we go through, and if it's so visually externally, that's what we needed in order to realize, Houston, we got a problem, right? and realize and make the effort to go about bringing change, healing.
Yeah. And I love that we're talking about it first from a healing perspective, right? Because there's so many things that happen to women. I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to talk about this time period that tests women in their femininity that could potentially take them from this place to where we were just talking about, right? Some type of disease, some type of sickness, right? I know that, and I'm going to tell a quick story, and I'm going to tell it fast. I was, in New Jersey at the time, found out that I had breast cancer. But before I found out, I met this woman who was, I don't know, psychic, whatever you want to call her. I don't know what title she used for herself, but she came up to me in a parking lot at a shopping center. And she said that you're struggling with some masculine energy. She said, I don't know if it's in the workplace or if it's personal, but it's breaking your body down. And then I found out afterwards that I had breast cancer on my right side, which they said is attributed to some masculine energy, right? So I
wait to talk about this. Yes, let's get it.
Yes. So saying all that to say that my femininity, even though I didn't know it, was being tested then, but there was two situations. So she came up to me. It was both at work, it was both professional and personal, because I was dealing with a boss who I liked personally, but I didn't like as a manager. So we were struggling. We were kind of at odds, at that time. And then I was also struggling at the time with my son's father, and we were at odds, right? And this is how all of this starts. So the two men, right, in my life that I see the most, right, and where I started to struggle, and how disease came in as a result of it. Yeah.
Yes. Part of what I share in my wellness masterclass, which I also call the eczema masterclass, but it's one of the same, right? Because it's applicable to many different scenarios, is speaking to that point of a lot of time women, when we're dealing with dis-ease, right? No matter what it is, sometimes we got to check and see if our femininity needs healing. And one reason is due to us constantly having to lean into our masculine. Okay, so any situation that puts you constantly in your masculine, that is killing you as a woman.
Yeah.
So I talk about in my eczema masterclass, and it's free, right? We host it now. I host it now every month. Because I want our communities to get this, so that we can be more in wellness and be blooming and looking and feeling our best. So that's huge component. And that could take on many different forms, right? It can take on, if you're constantly in the defense, or having to be constantly aggressive, or having to be constantly strong, or forced to be in the mule position. Never being able to be soft and free. All those things are signs your femininity needs balancing, and you're being killed as a woman, right? So a lot of times we think a woman being killed is a physical thing, like, you know, I don't know, something, you know, I don't know, you got hit by a car, or I don't know, something like that. But this other form of constantly being in your masculine and different ways, that's a form of killing you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So do you think that, because, you know, there's all facets of this, right, that kind of start to break down this femininity. Do you think that, you know, women taking on these leadership roles, having to be head of household, right? Having to be that, you know, I'm going to say a corporate leader or the entrepreneurial leader, right? The breadwinner, you know, having to handle, you know, getting the car fixed. And I'm saying these things because I want people to get it in that traditional, kind of traditional sense, not saying that men and women have to have these certain roles, but there are things that a man should do, right? And that a woman should do. So I'm saying, just because of these kind of like, not even role reversals, women have been forced to do it because they may not have a man there, right?
Mm.
Um,
I
so
hear you. I hear
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So my thoughts on that is, I don't always like to put it into a role dynamic, right?
Mhm.
Because one way to reclaim your femininity is to heal any broken relationships with men in your life. You know, if you were abandoned by a father,
Mhm.
you know, intentionally or not, maybe a divorce happened, and just because of that, that changed your family dynamics at a critical age,
Mhm.
to a relationship or dynamics, you know, with your whole ancestral male lineage, right?
Mhm.
That may need to be healed. Um, so I don't always look at it in traditional roles, because I feel that one way that you can protect yourself from being killed as a woman,
Mhm.
and one way of that is always being forced into your masculine, is to put, you know, strong boundaries in place.
Mhm.
Is to be like, yes, I'm capable, but is it my job to be that capable?
Mhm.
If it's no, then you need to put a boundary in place. You need to say no,
Mhm.
or start saying what some of our other uh, sisters, you know, women, I don't know. You know, so you have to put things. It could, you know, it could be communicated or actioned upon in different ways. So I don't want us to think about it always in a traditional male role. Like, I'm not married, right?
Mhm.
And one way with me healing my femininity
Yeah.
is, you know, healing my relationship with my ancestral male lineage,
Mhm.
and then that set right my relationship with men, and being able to call on the masculine for assistance. Now, if they answer not, that's on them. But at
Mhm.
least I spoke that I was in need, and I will speak that to not only the masculine but also the feminine, and
Mhm.
see who answers the call.
Yeah.
You know, or
Mhm.
putting boundaries in place. Again, is it for me to do that?
Mm.
Am I maxed out? You know,
Yeah.
um, is it actually somebody else's job, and they really need to be, you know, called to do their job,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh.
And so preventing people from allowing, forcing you into the mule position, which can
Yeah.
happen to you in the workplace, and it can
Mhm.
happen to you in your family life.
Mhm.
Um, and then you're all exhausted, beat down, you're, you know, living to work, and, you know, your whole presence. And then even if men like you or interested in dating you, you can't have those relationships because you don't have, your femininity is off, right? So
That's good.
masculine and masculine is not going to get together and be in a loving relationship. It takes one to be a little bit more feminine energy. So
Mhm.
while your counterpart may be saying constantly damsel in distress and I don't know, and then you taking on these things because you're so capable,
Yeah.
you're hurting yourself, right? Because now you can't attract, maybe you can attract them, but you can't keep the man in your life, or maybe you can't even attract them. You're in a desert. And I speak
Mm.
of that because I went through a desert, you know.
Mhm. Ooh.
So until you understand, because we all
Mhm.
have our unique aspects as goddess to having our femininity
Yeah.
balance. And so, everybody's mix can be different, but just speaking from my own experience and saying, yeah, I went through a desert,
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm not in a relationship right now, but there's many men coming every day, constantly, right?
All right.
Versus a desert, right?
Yeah.
So it's different,
Yeah. Oh, there's two things I want to tackle that you just talked about, even though there was so much richness in what you said. But one, I want to go back to the beginning where you talked about the ancestral healing with with the masculine energy from your ancestors. I recognize this in my own family, right? Because I come from this line of like super strong women. And I know, and as I explore from what I've seen, and then I'll have to go back even further. There's definitely a disconnect with the masculine energy. So the feminine energy, but that feminine, strong female energy had to be a lot more prevalent in my family. So very key. Talk a little bit more about why it's so important to look at your ancestry when it comes to this healing.
Oh yeah. As I realized in my own journey, sometimes that's the key to what we do when we do it, while we're doing it and we don't even know it, like consciously. And so that's the key. And is understanding this. Like, so when you come to something, I like people to pause, meditate, pray on it and see, is this just a me issue? Or is this something that actually is ancestral?
Yeah.
It's affecting many people in your family. It's because there's a wound that needs to be healed, and maybe you are in the generation that's going to help heal that, and restore that harmony there. So that also now it restores your, personal relationships with, the masculine, not even in your family, right? Where you can accept the assistance, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can be so capable and used to having to do so much on our own that, we become more capable and more capable, which is okay. But we got to put boundaries in place, and we got to be able to receive assistance from the masculine.
Yeah.
We got to be able to ask assistance from the masculine, and assistance. We got to be able to receive love and assistance from feminine too, and receive love and ask that as well. It's super, super critical.
Yeah, that's so good. I wanted to also tackle when you talked about being in the desert, right?
And that's before we go forward.
Yeah.
Something I just said was around that giving and receiving. That's a link. Okay. If you're always giving, which is a form of the masculine, or the feminine that is out of balance. Okay. Because usually, right, masculine gives, feminine receives. Okay. And we all give and receive at times, but if you're the one who's always giving of your time, giving of your abilities, and giving of your everything, self-sacrificing for others, then of course you're going to deplete. You got to receive as well.
Yeah.
So then, are we receiving? I'll give you an example. One day I was helping let's say associate, right, move, and helping her pack, and I offered. I was like, "Oh, I'll help you, girlfriend." It's hey, I know you don't have a lot of family here. I always says I don't have a lot of family here, so I know how it is when you're moving. And we were taking some things to the dumpster, and we were taking some things to the Goodwill and all that. And so, and packing up her vehicle, this man saw us, or we were coming down the steps, and he was saying something. He was being very nice. And I was like, "Oh, hi." And he was like, "Oh, do you need some help? I can take that to the dumpster for y'all if you're needing some help taking some things to the dumpster." Well, he said, "Yes." Thank you. He's assist.
Right.
Like, "Oh, that's okay."
What?
Again, the masculine was offering, and sometimes it's those quick things that happen, those exchanges, that you don't even realize that you are actively turning down assistance from the masculine. But you maybe can receive it if a girlfriend said, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, girlfriend, okay, yeah." But then the man comes along and you're like, "No, we got it. No, no, we're not okay."
Exactly. And I definitely had to learn that, being real transparent, had to learn that because I was so used to doing things, on my own, and now accepting, okay, when the masculine is asking, yep, here you go. Thank you so much,
Yes. Gracious with it. Yes. Appreciative. Yes.
Absolutely. So before we get into talking about, being in the desert, because I want to explore this a little bit more, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to explore this because this too is very significant when it comes to, kind of testing the femininity, right? And I want to look at it from the perspective of kind of exploring when it's necessary versus when there's healing that needs to take place, right? Because I think there's two sides to it, right? So everyone out there, we will be right back. Don't go anywhere. This is good conversation. I love this. But it's so necessary, especially in this day and time. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're watching The Whole Living Show on Trajectory TV.
And we are back. So we are going to bring the beautiful Carli Abrams back in. This conversation is so good and so applicable to this time period, right? This day and age. So before we went on break, you heard Carli talking about, healing the femininity. And we just mentioned, going back and looking at your ancestry and kind of seeing where you have that disconnect with the masculine energy. But she also talked about being in a desert. And I really wanted to explore when the desert is necessary and when when you're in a desert and you actually need healing. So talk to us a little bit about, both sides of that.
Yes. Whew. That's a good one.
I know.
Really good one. I'm letting that sit with me for a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's when you need, if you're really in a desert, if you're really just in a space for time out, where you put yourself in that space.
Yeah, because sometimes I think God, the divine, right, is calling us to kind of what we sometimes say as sitting still, but that's in the desert, right? Being in the desert. Sometimes he's calling us to do that, to recognize certain things in our life, and then other times, like you said, we're putting ourselves in that situation for whatever reason. Using the smaller example, like your girlfriend saying, no, we don't need any help type of thing. It's off-putting. And then it puts you in a desert, right? That's a small example. But think about how that changes the energy of the masculine, because they may not see the femininity in you when you're kind of responding in that manner, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
You know what? I feel like sometimes when it's self-imposed versus a real desert, as showing that your femininity is out of balance,
Mm-hmm.
you're being killed as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is the timing, the duration,
Mm-hmm.
if it's self-imposed, if it's, more than 6 or 9 months, you might want to rethink
Mm-hmm.
and say, what else is going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, my desert was years, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Years. And some of that was self-imposed, right? But also was reckoning it, I didn't even know it, but it was a lot of healing that needed to happen, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
carrying a lot of baggage, um, a lot of wounds. And yeah, so I think the duration is a big teller and big
Mm-hmm.
indicator. Um, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then, did you like again, did you make that decision to put yourself self-imposed? It was a conscious decision, or
Mm-hmm.
find yourself in, months and months and months, years and years and years. And if you're going to be true with yourself and real, be like, dang, wait a minute, how long has it
Yeah.
been? Okay. Yeah, that's just one indicator, right? It's not
Yeah.
always an indicator that your femininity is out of balance if you're not in a relationship with a man or
Right. Right.
of some sort. No,
Right.
may be one cue of it, you know, something may be off here. Let's take
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the two are intertwined, right? Like I think when you are self-imposing, right, the desert, you may not know exactly why you're doing what you're doing, right? Until you take the time to explore and say there's something that needs to be healed here. So sometimes they kind of mesh, right? Or they come into each other because maybe you're being called for something else that you just didn't even realize was happening until you really sat back and started to reflect on it. But I wanted to ask you too, like, because you mentioned being in the desert for years. So, how would you suggest for women out there who are, in that position, how to recognize first that healing needs to take place, and then, maybe some steps on how to get started with
I
that
love
healing?
I love that. Um, how to recognize
Mhm.
if you hear some tips on how to recognize
Mhm.
signs. If you're always exhausted every day, if your
Mhm.
workplace is super challenging, super stressful, super non-supportive, and you in a fight every day, and not like physically you're out there fighting, or but there's just this dynamic. Okay, it's racist,
Mhm.
it's sexist, I don't know what, it's a lot of toxic aspects going on.
Mhm.
um, that is one way. Another way is if you're in a workplace where victim playing is the norm,
Mhm.
right? And I want to talk about this from a feminine, a woman standpoint. There are women who will show up in the workplace or in the community, and they are always damsel in distress. They may be victim playing,
Mhm.
and you have to really use your discernment to understand, are they real victims? If not, is it a tool to put you in the mule so their responsibility transfers to you, which I
Mhm.
call the mule, right?
Mhm.
So is your kindness then, making you more susceptible to a mule? Is your sharpness and intelligence making you more susceptible? Is colorism at play?
Mhm.
All these different dynamics that women will attack a woman. So
Mhm.
you are, a woman is being killed. It's not necessarily from the masculine.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's also from the feminine.
Yeah.
And so really being
Ooh.
mindful of that. Okay. And that
Yeah.
happens a lot in the workplace. And it can possibly show its head in communities, but this is why you have to be super discerning, and, put down boundaries,
Mhm.
and so that you protect yourself. So is it for me to do? I'll give an example. Once in the workplace, um, now it was a workplace where it was the norm, where you would see women of a certain um, complexion,
Mhm.
colorism was big, so playing victim. But there was a
Mhm.
lot of women who didn't play victim, no matter what color and all that they were. But many played victim, right?
Mhm.
And I'm a sharp person. And so a lot of times it was, oh, I'll help you being nice. But then the person then begins to think, well, you should, where it's not your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going into a meeting once, and there was a white project manager, male, older gentleman. It was a white woman. I was a Swedish colleague.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a global meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her throwing the fit of, she didn't know how to do some aspect of her job. And then he was like, well, you do it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't know either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I started wisening up
Mm-hmm.
and not taking on what was not mine to take on,
Mm-hmm.
and I was responsible for everything or so many aspects, right? Or it was a reflection of me if it didn't get done well, because I was the brand lead or, global lead of, anyhow, I said, I don't know how either. For it's a good time for you to figure out, nasty, from the white gentleman. And I said, well, yeah, it's a great time for Hannah to figure out how to do her job.
Exactly.
She was speechless. If you have the audacity to look at me and tell me it's a good time to figure out when it's not even my job,
Right.
her job.
Right.
So you need to talk to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good time for her to figure out how to do her job.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have to, be brave and, and put those boundaries in place. And if you always start with, clear boundaries, then you never get in a scenario where you're the mule. And so that was a big learning for me of, don't let your kindness be abused. Don't let your gifts be abused. Your capability be abused. Just because I'm capable, it doesn't mean I should take on the world. Just because I'm capable doesn't mean that I can have a full life outside of work and be able to turn to Beyonce if I want with my spouse or whatever I'm trying to do.
Right.
Where they playing I don't know, and then they got time to have a boyfriend, turn to Beyonce, have a husband, have their kids, a family, but yet you exhausted, your heart is not in the right space. Your femininity is out of balance.
Yeah.
And
And it's something so key there.
It happens to many different women if we're not conscious of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that part for me too was key when you started to talk about the struggle between the women, the feminine against the feminine, right? And I would say, and this is my opinion, but there have been studies on women's relationships and how key and effective they are when women have good relationships with other women, that they flourish, right? And they shine because they feel supported and they have accountability and they have, also love and laughter, right? Through that support system.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably even more challenging when the feminine is attacking the feminine, right? And then there needs to be some healing around that. And that's a hard balance in the workplace, right? To find, kind of people other women that you're aligned with in the workplace that will support you, because, so much of, especially corporate America, right, where people are trying to get ahead and there may not be enough support in that space, right? So that's a challenging piece, but very key, just because of, the studies that have shown that, when women are kind of locking arms together, it's insurmountable what can be done, right? When women start to come together. So I love
or just
that
you
way.
valuing yourself in a whole different way and putting those boundaries in place. Even if they're not valuing, you value yourself so much that you won't allow yourself to be a mule. You won't allow yourself.
Absolutely.
You understand the consequences. You see, that's when the real healings, from a femininity standpoint, that happened for me, is acknowledging what was really going on in these environments for me. And that it was killing me as a woman, right? And that was attacking my femininity. And so then it was after I recognized that, now I could mourn it, So there was release, there was crying, there was feeling through and really re-looking at aspects like, wow, right? Because how can you ever put the right strategy and tactics in place if you don't know what's really going on?
Yeah.
If you don't understand what that really is,
Yeah.
real consequences are. Because a lot of times when that is happening, your femininity is out of balance. It may not just be in a relationship desert. You may have fibroids. You may get, what else? Can't conceive, you may have an extended gut or some gut stuff going on that is not just about the gut, but it's about the femininity being out of balance. You can have cancer. You can have hair loss. It can show up in so many different ways. Heavy, painful periods. And so it can show up so many different ways. So it's so real. So understanding that, let's not just say, oh, it's just workplace dynamics. No, let's really understand what it's really doing to us as women.
Yeah.
And that's how we can reclaim our femininity and protect it.
Yeah. So in light of that, talk about what you just said and why this is important, the mourning process. Like once you recognize, because we just talked about like kind of recognizing it, once you recognize that, why is that mourning process so important?
It's fully acknowledging throughout your whole body. It's allowing you to feel through it, like, dang, if I would have known what I know now years ago, how differently I would have shown up. How you can protect yourself with so many wounds and trauma and battle. How many dreams could have already been realized, So there's a lot to feel through, understand the impact and then understanding your part in it. It wasn't just those people, it was what was your part in it. So that mourning, and that helps you to understand and get true about, well, what was my part in it too? Right? There was aspects of me that needed to be healed, which could have been, from ancestral and then just my own stuff, right? And then going through now then to a ritual. I developed a ritual for myself, and that ritual could have many different components. It doesn't have to be complicated. And it's a beginning, right? But let me tell you, after I did that ritual, I bled for 2.5 days. So my cycle came on immediately after I did the ritual, and I bled for 2.5 days. And not like a regular cycle. It was, I was having to change sanitary pads every like 15 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
Even if I try to walk around outside for 15, 30 minutes, by the time I came in, I'm soiled through my clothes.
Wow.
So it was major. And this is happening for 2.5 days. And I remember saying to myself, if this goes on past 3 days, and I go to the hospital, but it stopped, right? So it's real, right? And I'm definitely happy to talk about the ritual, but you'll have to tell me if that's more you want to learn.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that was gonna go into the next phase of like what tools can people use in order to start the healing process.
Yeah, listen, if you're not used to really this type of healing work, I would say call in an advocate to assist, right? Or tell a friend what you're going to be up to, right? So that you can get some support. Now, I'm used to this type of healing work, but I was still caught off guard by what followed immediately. But I knew I was okay. I knew I was safe. I knew. So I just want to put that out first.
Sure.
And so with the ritual, again, everybody's can be different. Mine was setting the alchemy. And that's really, you can, prayer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't know what different person's religion is, but
Mm-hmm.
prayer can be setting the alchemy,
Mm-hmm.
calling on the angelic,
Mm-hmm.
light forces can be um, part of setting that alchemy and the protection of the space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've studied. I should like to say I studied different ancient healing techniques. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
so this allows me to have a knowledge of how to set the alchemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyhow, you can call on plant medicine to be a part of your ritual. I actually um, love water, so I was in the bath
Mm-hmm.
and I called on plant medicine as well
Mm-hmm.
as part of setting the alchemy. Um, and setting what's going to be key is setting the attention. Your
Mm-hmm.
attention, making sure it's pure. Um, um, yeah,
Yeah.
intention, very clear,
Yeah.
and that will guide the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know,
You can also have altars. Altars is a part of
yeah.
that ritual as well. So it all depends, right?
Yeah.
Like even back in the day, like I don't know, like you hear of like grandmothers, like they having their praying closet. Okay, that was her altar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and your altar can have whatever you feel like you're called to have on it
Mm-hmm.
as part of, healing your femininity.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's like a true um I don't want to call it this, but it's a release, right? It is definitely a release of things that need to actually come out, a lot deeper than just saying, I release it, right? It's much deeper than that. But it makes me think about, when the ancestors used to get the holy water, right, and start the prayer, and you would start to see that water change, right,
Mhm.
as things were being released.
Mhm.
So, just certain things like that. But being able to actually heal yourself from a more spiritual place, I would say, and we call on the divine here, so I'm going to leave it at that for the audience, right? Because it needs to look like whatever it needs to look like for you and where you are, in your own space, with the spiritual, with guidance, with meditation, whatever it is for you. You heard Carly say prayer, but whatever that is, for you, that's what it needs to
Mhm.
look like in order for you to be able to really release, what's
Mhm.
there and needs to be healed. But we are at the end of the show. It's always, the conversations are always so good, so good. So you definitely have to come back. This is my Charlotte sister here, everybody. But we love you all out there. We thank you for joining us. Listen, for all of the women out there, this is the Whole Living Show, but we're talking to the women tonight. If you feel like you need some healing, that your femininity is being challenged, I implore you to reach out to Carli, because she's done this work before. She has her own wellness classes. You heard her talk about the wellness master classes that she does. It's called the Eczema Master Class, but it's more around wellness. She is a scientist. She is a healer, and she really understands how to do this from different aspects too. She's a scientist and she's a healer, right? So you heard those two. Those are two totally different aspects where you can get some healing when you connect with her. So I want to give you the two different websites that I have for her. We have for her here, polynationapothecary.com. So make sure that you take that, or you can go to polynation.com. So we want you to make sure that you reach out to Carli if you are in need of healing. And she has some amazing products that you can use
Yes.
too. Natural, holistic products that are going to help you heal, your physical body while you are doing all of the releasing as well. So again, polynation.com or polynationapothecary.com. All right, Carli, thank you so much for being here. We love you here on the show, so make sure that you come back for
Yes.
anything that you want to share. Everybody out there, be well. Until next week, we will see you right here on Whole Living at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Wednesday. Take care.